Let's take a look at how we can do our render setup when we are ready to render our animation out. So what I'll do is I'll simply go to the render setup box over here, this button. That'll open the render setup dialog box for me. You can see there's a whole bunch of tabs. The first most important one is the time output. You can specify your range for your animation over here. The area to render. Custom size, this is very important. So if you're doing like a HD video, you can just specify that over here. Let's say a half HD. Any other options, make sure you check them, because sometimes people would uncheck them depending on, let's say if you're not rendering any effects, or if you don't want any effects to render, and if you're doing a small test render, then sometimes people will turn things off over here. So make sure anything you've turned off, make sure you turn it on if you need it. If you don't need it, for example, I don't need effects, I can always turn it off right now. Most important one, render output is again an important one. So where's your file going to? So if I just go over here right now, I have my 3ds Max project. I'll say, just call it test. And all formats you can specify. Normally I would just do a sequence of images. So if you're just doing a test, I would do JPEGs, but for higher quality, I would do Targas or TIFFs. So let's say if I'm just going to do JPEG right now, I'll say save. I'll still say best, small, large over here for file size, and normal. And right now what it's going to do is it's going to start rendering my animation when I hit render from frame 0 to 100. Then the next thing you would want is assign renderer. Over here you can change your renderer if you want to. Right now I'm just doing the default scanline renderer, but depending on what's loaded in your system, you can have Mental Ray or iRay and so on. Or if you have other third-party renderers like V-Ray and so on. So I'll just leave it at scanline, but that's where you select that. Remember though, when you select one of these, a lot of tabs are going to change. Then you have your renderer. I would always turn on shadows if you have any shadows. Most of the times you will. Mapping, turn that on. Anti-aliasing, this is very important. Make sure that if you're using area, that's a default anti-aliasing filter right here. Some of the good ones are, I like Catmull ROM, very, very nice. And everything you select will kind of give you a nice little description of what it does. So here you go. Here are some motion blur parameters, object motion blur, image motion blur, depending on what you're using. Then you also have your render elements. If you're doing any render passes, you can do them over here, right here. You can have your lighting pass, your diffuse pass, and so on. Then you have your ray tracer quality right over here. And you add advanced lighting if you're using any light tracer or radiosity. But if you're using Mental Ray, then again, like I said, a lot of things over here are going to change. You can see I have indirect illumination tab now with my final gather and my caustics and GI or global illumination. But that's how you would set this up. Right now I'm just going to go back to my default scan line. Make sure always your save file is checked. And I'll simply go and hit render. And also your quick render was very simple. We were doing that a lot of times. We were just simply clicking on quick render right here. So right now I'm just going to uncheck that and simply hit render. And it's going to ask me confirm overwriting because I hit quick render and my save file was turned on. So let's take this down over here. And let me quickly show you where this is saving and how it's looking. So right over here, I'm just going to get this directory right in over here. You can see all these images are populating right over here. So you can see right there. So I'm just going to cancel the render at this time. But that's how you would use your render output window.